Could have done something different, but not that hard. It's very artistic. It's very technical. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Watch Collective 2 podcast. My name is Ahmed Gaudat. I'm your host and one of the Watch Collective 2. And today I have the man who took the hard route in order to make an impact in the watch industry. So today I have Kasper Reisner from Vitrium. Thank you so much, Kasper, for accepting the invite and joining me today.
Yeah, man, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited to be a part of this.
I mean, I'm really excited about this episode, especially that it's the first time to see your pieces yesterday, and I was amazed and I fell in love. I think we should start first with a quick background or quick brief about yourself before watches. So yeah, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you so much. You know, it's always difficult to sum up your whole life before.
Yes,
but,
of course.
So my background is in something completely different. I worked as a photographer and videographer for 13 years. You know, I had a huge and still have a huge passion for photography and videography. And I just found out after 13 years that the passion that I had completely disappeared. Unfortunately, when you have a family,
Yes.
you have to support your family in some way. You have to put bread on the table, and that sometimes means that you have to compromise on your passions. And I found out, unfortunately, that I could make quite a bit of money by doing something that I wasn't really passionate about. And so, I found myself working in this glass cubicle doing, product-related videos of, very unsexy products. Something like appliances and white goods and stuff like that. And I said to myself, there has to be something else that I can do in my life and have this creative outlet. And at the same time, I was very envious at some of my clients. Working as a freelance photographer, you get to meet so many different clients that have amazing products. And helping them tell their story and showing their product in the best light possible. But sometimes I felt a little bit of envy towards them because they had this amazing product that they were completely passionate about.
Yes.
And here I was selling hot air to companies. And so I wanted to have this tangible product, this concrete product that you could pick up like this watch and say, well, this watch looks good. I want to buy it. So I wanted to have those moments and looking at the customer and showing him my product and letting him experience it and make a purchasing decision based on that.
Yeah.
A very honest transaction.
Yes.
And so that's really what, one piece of that puzzle, I would say. One day I was sitting there in my glass cubicle, having my lunch break, and I was watching this video from Watchfinder, and I still remember it today. It was the Lange und Söhne Datograph Pertpetual. And if you know about watches, this is a heavy hitter. It's one of the most coveted chronographs ever made.
And shown by a very heavy content creator as well. So
coming from video creation and cinematography, I immediately recognized that this was something special. Andrew is a master at what he's doing, and it completely blew me away. I looked at this watch and I said to myself, I have to have this watch. And so I went online and I saw how much it cost. And I kind of decided maybe I don't want to buy this watch anyway. So like any sensible person out there, I decided I'll just make my own. I'll just make my own watch. So that's what started it. And, it's not the most sensible thing to do, but I was driven by this desire to do something different with my life. And this was my ticket out of that. in the first instance, this was only to make a watch for myself. So what I did was I started sketching, and I had this idea and used the Lange & Söhne watches as a base, made a sketch, and then threw away the pictures of all the watches I'd seen from Lange & Söhne, and I started sort of developing that idea from that, and from my own memory and from my own preferences of how a watch should look. And it ended up, being sort of like this one, but pretty far from it anyway. But I learned this program called Fusion 360. It's a 3D program that you can use for product development and stuff like that. And started 3D printing, walking around with this plastic shell on my
But
hand.
it's your own creation, so you take pride in it.
Yeah, very much. So seeing something like this materialize in front of me was amazing. So back then I didn't know that I wanted to do enameling. This was just, I wanted to do something with my own imagination, seeing something materialize, a product that came from my head and into reality. That was really what started it. And I knew that I wanted to do something with the watch myself. So I didn't want to do like many of the micro brands do. There's nothing wrong with this, by the way, but many micro brands do that. They have this idea or a sketch of a watch, and they send it off to a manufacturer, and this manufacturer will go ahead and develop the watch for them.
Yes.
And we'll since then receive a watch complete, maybe a couple of prototypes before that, but seeing a watch completed, assembled everything, and just sell that. I didn't really want to do that. So what I wanted to do was create something with my own hands and maybe even learn something new.
Yes.
Because this was part of that journey for me as well. And why enameling?
because it's hard. You could have done something different, but not that hard. It's very artistic. It's very technical.
Definitely. So I guess I'm just a very, self-harming individual. I don't know. But yeah, I have this stupid thing, like this totally degenerate thing with myself that if someone tells me not to do it,
you're gonna do it.
I'm definitely going to do it. So on my wall in my office, I have this motivational poster. It says, "Give up." And every time I look at that, I'm reminded about everybody's opinion of what I should and should not do.
Yes.
But at the same time, I'm very aware that there's a reason why everybody has this opinion. It's because they're telling their own story about what they think they would be capable of doing if they were in my shoes. And so, not to put myself on a pedestal or anything like that, not at all. I think I'm just as bad as anyone else at, most things. But I just have this knack of doing what I'm not supposed to do and finding out that the things that I couldn't do, I could do anyway. So I'm kind of the bumblebee, I guess. We discovered he could fly or whatever. I discovered enameling in a very, very funny way, actually. I wanted to do something very different. And picking up a traditional craft, it was one of my goals. So case making was something I was thinking about, but I have like 10 thumbs. So for me, it would be difficult to pick up something like that. Not very technical in that aspect.
Yes.
And so that was out of the question. Movements, I wouldn't have to even say anything about that. I don't have millions of dollars and, and watchmakers, So there was only really for me, the last option would be the dial in some way. And so I went to this expo in Copenhagen with a company called Klarlund, which is one of the bigger retailers in Copenhagen and in Denmark. So I went there and I met this representative of one of the traditional brands there, one of the bigger ones. And she told me that, well, it's a good idea to make your own watch. Maybe even make your own components. That's also a good idea. She was very supportive until she said, but please, for the love of God, don't make enamel dials.
Oh my God.
Only crazy people make enamel dials. And yeah, I guess I'm crazy because on the way back home on the train, I purchased my kiln and yeah, started working on that. It took a while before I made my first, passable enamel dial.
Yes.
It felt a little bit like slamming your head into a brick wall,
Yeah.
getting up again, changing trajectory just a slight bit,
But hitting it again.
hitting it again. And at some point, if you're changing that trajectory, enough times, you're going to steer clear of that wall at some point. I think that happened, but I needed some help to get there. Just like you have communities for watchmaking, you also have for enameling. And so I wanted to learn enameling, and I watched a lot of middle-aged women doing jewelry. That was actually something I learned a lot from, because basically it's the same principles, it's the same techniques as in enamel jewelry making. So that was a good starting point, but I still found myself doing the same mistakes over and over and not really knowing what was going on.
Yeah.
At one point, though, I because this is the second thing that I should mention, maybe COVID hit, and my world around me and everybody's world around them was closing in on them. In a way, we all felt that because we were isolated.
Yes.
If you had to have a meeting with one of your colleagues, you had to go on Teams, even though he's just two houses down, right? But in a weird sense, that brought the world together in a way, and especially for me because I met Naomi Neville, who's also now a partner she's a co-founder of Vitreum now, and so. I met her
during COVID.
During COVID on the internet, and the fantastic thing about that was it felt just as real as talking to someone else from the same town as me, just on Teams. But yeah, it was just such a good opportunity to connect with people that you wouldn't have connected with.
Yeah. Before I get into Naomi, because I know she has a lot of depth in this topic that we're discussing. But what does Vitrium means?
So I wanted to have a name that was really, really simple, but at the same time very descriptive of what we were doing. And basically, enamel is glass. And Vitrium, it means glass in Latin.
Okay.
And so on the dial, you can see that it says Danish, but it says vitreus emalje. It means vitreous enamel, yes, or glass enamel. And enameling is basically the art of taking a chunk of glass, crushing it into very, very small glass chunks, particles, sifting out the very, very fine particles, and then putting it onto a metal surface.
Yes.
In our case, we're using silver for our dials, but you can use other types of metal. You can use precious metals, such as gold or platinum. But I have a feeling that not many are going to use platinum as their base of enameling, because as you may know, the percent of dials which are thrown away is quite high, especially in the beginning of creating a new type of dial. Yeah.
So yeah, back to Naomi, who's the second pillar and the second base of Vitrium.
Yeah.
Tell me about her background a little bit.
Well, so Naomi is a very, sometimes I think about Naomi as, have you seen Karate Kid?
Yes.
So you know how Mr. Miyagi, he's training the Karate Kid wax
on, wax off.
Yeah. So Naomi is one of the very, very few that are traditionally trained in enameling by a master enameler, and one of the most legendary enamelers from the UK called Phil Barnes. And he was a very, very celebrated Champ-Levé enamel specialist. And he trained Naomi as the last one. So she was the last protege of his before he sadly passed away. She's since taken up that mantle, and she's also teaching enameling. I suspect she has a little less time now than she did in the past, but she is carrying on his legacy.
Yes.
and still using the same traditional techniques that she had been taught by Phil Barnes, and I think that's just a beautiful thing to have this ancient technique and preserving it into a world that's evolving so much. I think that's beautiful, and Naomi is just a very, very special person.
She sounds great, and the last bearer of the experience of a master enameler as well. This is something precious, puts a lot of pressure as well on her, you know. Let me move to the watches that you're making a little bit. And I know that you have a lot of Easter eggs all around the watch. Let's start from on the back of the watch. It's written one of few on all the watches. How many is a few?
Originally, we didn't even think that we'd sell that many. So for us, one of few was very natural, because this was just a passion project. This was just something that was meant to give us joy, and the few that decided that they want to purchase a watch, it would bring them joy as well. But we never imagined the crazy popularity of especially the core collection that we're seeing right now is simply humbling. I mean, crazy. But we are making quite few watches. We are only making 100 watches right now per year, and that's on a good year.
From all the models?
Yeah, across all models. So you can imagine that in order to change that tagline to let's say one of moderately few, it's going to be, it's going to take a while before we get there anyway. So I think one of few is quite suitable.
Descriptive.
Yeah.
I know that few is not a limited edition, right?
No. So we do have limited edition watches, and in fact we just unveiled one last night, and it was amazing to see so many people, by the way, wanting to come and see our watches. It's surreal. But yeah, the core collection is in its definition the core collection, and it's an evergreen collection, meaning that it's there to stay, and it is of course limited, but not by number. We're not saying we're only making 20 emerald green and that's it. No.
Yeah, you cannot limit something which is already very rare.
But it's going to be limited anyway, because we're only making so many watches and the demand is crazy. And so what's happening right now is that you're putting in an order for a watch, and then you have to wait a little bit for you to actually.
What's your lead time now?
So right now we're looking at, if you're purchasing a watch now, we're looking at March, April for your watch.
Okay.
So we're picking up pace faster now, but that's also because we are training an enameler in Wales together with Naomi. So she is actually, I mentioned she's a good teacher as well, and so we're doing that, and that's hopefully going to help us make little more watches going forward.
Let's understand why we have this type of numerals, because when you look at the numerals on the dial, it's very special, right? It looks almost like the Arabic numerals, but it's not.
Yeah, it was COVID, and we were all sitting there back home, and twiddling our thumbs, not knowing what we should do, and not do with ourselves and our time, right? And so I had a lot of time to think of how I could just make this project my own and something that I would be very proud of. I never really loved what came out of Denmark and rest of Scandinavia when it came to design. For me, we often hear the words Nordic minimalism or
IKEA.
IKEA and exaggerated Bauhaus design and just hiding lazy design behind
good branding.
The pretenses. This is just Nordic minimalism. Don't worry, it's all good. Everybody wants this. I just always thought that this was a lazy way of designing, some minimalism is good.
Yes.
But it shouldn't be void of any details at all, and it should have some soul left in it.
Depth as well, yes.
Yeah, it should tell you something when you're looking at it. It should really
make you feel something.
Yeah, exactly. A good way of putting it. It should make you feel something when you're looking at a watch, especially at watch, I think. So I wanted to do a different take on Nordic minimalism because if you look at this watch, it is minimalist, but it's a different kind of minimalism, and it's full of details still.
Yes, and this is a hard thing to achieve, huh?
Yeah, so going back to the numbers, the numerals on the watch are not at all, what you'd expect from a minimalist watch at all. So apart from the minute track, which is very minimalist, the numerals are very, very organic looking and very primitive, yeah. It looks like it's handwritten by a toddler, right? I've heard this anyway. Hey, maybe that's a segment we should go into at some point, making watches for kids with the handwriting on.
I think this is gonna be selling so bad,
That's good. Let's keep this a secret. But anyway, going back to this, so I want to go back into the heritage of Scandinavia and Denmark in particular. My ancestors are Vikings, so they're very good at plundering and maybe navigating the seas and good at many things, right? But they were not very good at writing shit down.
Yes.
So they're not very good at that. So they had this runic system, this writing system.
The runes.
Yeah, called Greater Futhag, which was what they used back then. And it was good for some things. It was good for carving into a piece of wood saying, I was at the shop, did this, and this guy owes me money. I like a mead or whatever. Yeah. Whatever they would say, like... good to plunder England again or whatever, but it wasn't the same as having a piece of paper and using handwriting as we do today. So what I tried to do was find out if there was like a rune for one for two and three and so forth, but it turned out they didn't have that. It just didn't exist in the Vikings writing system at all. And so that was a big letdown because it was, it'd taken so long to get there. And so I was speaking with this guy that I had written to quite a lot, and he had been studying the Vikings and our common ancestors in Scandinavia for a long time. And he said, well, no, we don't have runes meaning this, but I do have something else that might interest you. And so he showed me this digital copy of the Hauksbok, which is a book from 1310. It's written by this Icelandic guy.
Okay.
And he was traveling in Scandinavia, writing down sagas, as you do. If you're Icelandic, this is, every Icelandic guy during that time was writing down their own saga, right? And it was always about how the Vikings were the best ever, right? But this guy, Hauke Erlingsson, he was the first guy to use what would, would turn into Arabic numerals as we know them today, but they had been imported into Scandinavia at that time.
Oh.
So these are just ancient Arabic numerals from 1310. So it's like a timestamp.
Wow.
So if you look at, for instance, number 7, it looks very different.
Yes.
And I was told this yesterday, which was very, very interesting. The number 4 on this dial looks very peculiar. And I was told that it's actually the Hindi version of 4, but it's upside down.
Yes.
So I'm like, what? So it was, a eureka moment yesterday.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that you can see this sort of timestamp of a place in history, a time and place in history where they use these numbers, and you can almost see how they must have evolved into the numbers, the numerals that we use on today's watches. And so we simply lifted these numerals from the Hauksbok and we put them onto the dial. We changed the numbers 1 and 2. They didn't look very aesthetically pleasing. So we had to choose a later version of the numbers 1 and 2. But the 3 up until 9, and 10, they were. Yeah.
What I love about it, that it's something which I think it's the first to be done. I haven't seen such a crazy numerals system on a dial. And what I love about it, it's part of your DNA as a brand.
It is.
You see, the problem with people doing brands is finding the right DNA, like creating a DNA. So now when I see a Vitreum 2 meters, 3 meters away, 95% I'm gonna know that it's a Vitreum. And this is something very hard to achieve, and I like chapeau for that, to be honest.
Thank you so much.
One last thing maybe we shed light on when it comes to the watch's design. So first I knew or noticed that the logo is a man on a horse. So this is something which you made it clear, because somehow it looks like it, but you confirmed it. But there is a phrase on the back, which is, I don't know, I try to understand it on my own, but my Latin is not that good.
No, that's true. There is a Latin inscription on the back. The reason for it is, this whole watch journey for me was, part of it was for myself. This was a watch that I wanted to wear myself and be proud of as well. But it's also a way of reconnecting with my dad. My father died sadly when I was 16, and he was an entrepreneur, and he was very into archaeology as well. And his logo in his company was this man on a horse found on an ancient petroglyph in Sweden, in Bohuslän in Sweden. And he used this man riding this horse as his logo. And so I thought this was a perfect opportunity to sort of get to know my dad, because I never really got to know him. One of the things that he taught me to say in Latin, he was very good at Latin, was the sentence, "Via prudens non contraventum mingit." It means a wise man doesn't urinate against the wind. and it is words of wisdom, right?
Yes,
those are words of pure wisdom. You shouldn't do that anyway.
And a bit of sense of a dark humor, but it's very wise.
We tend to not take ourselves too seriously. Yes. So I love brands that have that philosophy themselves. Yeah. I connect with watches that are playful. So one of the brands that I really look up to in the independent scene is Moza. They're very playful, and the way that they always try to do some extra crazy stuff, it brings joy to people. Yeah. Just looking at it just makes you smile, yes. Right? And the way that they're doing is amazing. And they happen to do enamel dials as well, and they're masters at it. And one of my favorite watches of all time is the
Blue enamel?
is the blue enamel streamliner. Yeah,
small seconds.
it's fantastic.
It's amazing. It's an amazing watch. Again, all of this is contributing to your DNA. You know, either the back case, the dial, the numerals, everything is contributing to it, and I think you're doing a great job with it, to be honest. But looking into the models, right, in the first series, FH01, all of the series right now, you mentioned to me that one of the most, or the most sophisticated dials to make is the ammonite watch. Maybe you can like take us through why is it actually?
Yeah, so I can try and explain a little bit about the technical aspects of making an enamel dial. Obviously, the person that you should be talking about really here would be Naomi. But yeah, the ammonite, it's one of the most insanely annoying dials to make. And not only to make, it's a Champ-Levé enamel, which is a type of, it's a technique where you form these cells into a solid piece of silver or whatever you're working with. In our case, it's silver, but you form these cells into it. So what you have left when you carve out a cell into a piece of silver is, of course, the walls that are still there. Mm-hmm. And what you do then is you engrave the bottom of the silver, and then you put in enamel layer by layer. And one of the very, very annoying and frustrating things about the ammonite was actually the handling afterwards. Of course, it's very, it has so many small cells, and the smaller the cells, so this is during the enameling process, the smaller the cells, the more complicated it is to get right.
Yes.
Because so many things can go wrong, and inside of these very, very small cells, there can be, bubbles, and air can be trapped where there's, where the wall is. And if it's, there's these very, very, very tiny cells, sometimes you get bubbles trapped in there, and it's not good, because as soon as you grind down the enamel, you'll have holes in the enamel. Like, these bubbles are not something that you can completely get rid of. They are there, and it's part and parcel of doing enameling, but you can mitigate it. And the way that you do this is staying patient and just focusing on making the dial, building up slowly every single layer, and building up very, very small layers. And so if you're grinding too coarse, what you'll end up with is, think about marbles. If you have each of the enamel particles in there, think about them as marbles on top of each other, right? In between each marble is a little bit of air trapped. And so if you imagine the marbles being quite huge, the air gaps are going to be bigger. Yes. And then imagine that you crush them into very, very uniform but very small pieces of glass instead. Mm-hmm. So very small marbles. What you get is so much less air trapped inside of the dial, but it takes much longer to do. And it's also very, it's a balance, because if you make it too fine, what you'll end up with is this wispy, cloudy effect in the enamel, which you don't want. Generally, the bigger the particles, the more transparent they are.
Oh, okay.
Because it is, because there's bound to be a little bit of
transparency.
Yeah, the ammonite has so many small cells, and the pattern which has been engraved into the cells themselves are also very, very complicated. So if you have a look at it, for instance, so this is the ammonite, right?
Yeah.
So as you can see, there are two colors. One is this brownish golden color, and underneath that is this I call it a fingerprint pattern. It's just a very meticulous process to hand engrave all of these patterns into the dial. But then comes the handling of the silver afterwards, because you can see so much of the dial is actually bare. It's bare silver.
And heavily polished as well. So
yeah, and it needs to be, because if we're not polishing the silver, it's going to be scratched. We could have, if we wanted to, we could have brushed the silver instead, but we chose this mirror polish instead. The problem with having silver being laid bare like this is that you're bound to have some micro scratches in there, and especially silver is very, very soft, and so you can easily scratch this. So we really were very, very careful, and had to be very careful with this. Just handling it normally is not going to work, and so doing the ammonite dials took so much longer than it had to, and we had to redo quite a few of them. Because of that.
So what's in general the failure rate of an enamel dies that you're doing, or something more sophisticated than usual like this one?
Many companies have the enamel types that are sifted on have a bigger failure rate generally than the ones that we do. We do it in a different way, but generally the failures come in the beginning when we start to develop a type of dial. So we had this, but sometimes something happens, and enameling in its essence, it's actually not very hard to do. The complexity comes in the fact that you have to do so many different processes.
Yes.
And you have to do them in,
certain sequence, certain steps.
And there are so many things that you have to remember to do. So many things that you can and cannot do when you have to learn all of these things by doing them, pretty much. One of the things that I can mention here is that it's hard to describe how big the enameling, the grains should be before you can use them. But the way that you know that they're good is the way that it feels on the pestle and mortar when you're grinding them. And so it's very hard for me to tell you how it should be, but you just know that it's right because you can feel it in your fingers.
Every step tell you how the previous one was good enough or not.
So if I were an artist, I would say, it starts singing to me, right?
Yes.
It's telling me that it's ready to be made, right? But I'm not that pretentious. But but there's so many nuances to this. And in isolation, each of these processes are actually not very hard to do. But when you're doing it, a dial like this would take 2 to 3 days to make, just this core collection dial, for instance. And if you're doing something like this, or if you're doing a rare handcrafts dial, which takes 2 to 3 weeks to make one dial.
Oh my God.
There are so many possibilities of
failure at a lot of points.
Something happening at one point. Sometimes you can fix it. If you do something that, requires you to fix it, you can sometimes do that, but sometimes you have to throw it away. But I have a good story for you. Sometimes something unexpected happens, right? And when you are making a new product, especially, this happens a lot. Sometimes it's happy accidents. Sometimes you're like, we expect something to happen and something completely different happens.
But it's better. No.
And it's better. So we had this idea for a watch with a golden tone. So we wanted to do this watch. When you're flying home, at least I have this feeling when I'm flying home and I'm sitting there in the aircraft and I'm looking down and I see these fields and I say to myself, I know these fields. We are approaching my home now. This is my country we are entering into now. And I guess we all have that feeling of when we see our own home after being away for a long time. And that feeling of nostalgia and feeling at home, we wanted to recreate that in a dial. And for me, it was making a dial that had this motif of a field from above.
Yeah.
So some are very straight, some are very straight, and some are wonky. And so we wanted to make a dial called the Fields of Gold, dubbed after the singer Sting, his song. And it was supposed to be a field that had this golden tone of barley, but something really interesting happened, and something made it different. We discovered that we'd done something very, very special with the honeycomb dial, and it completely changed our direction. The honeycomb, as you know, has this very vibrant yellow and orange color,
which is my favorite watch, and you know this.
But one day Naomi was making a batch of honeycomb dials, and it turned pink, and she was sitting there. What the is this? And she sent me pictures and said, "I'm very sorry. I don't know what's going on. What's happening here? I don't know, but it looks completely bonkers. I don't know what's wrong." So we found out that there was a specific thing that she had done to the silver, and it turned the enamel completely into something different.
Oh, it's a chemical reaction happened.
So what I can say is that the silver has been processed, and this is what we call fire burnishing, and it's something that we have developed in-house, and it makes for a completely different color of dial than usual. So this turned into an orange dial that looked completely on fire. So when you look at it on pictures, you can see it's a pretty orange dial, right? But if you pick it up in real life and you move it around in the light, it feels like you're standing with a watch just on fire.
Yes.
And it's incredible. And this effect is only achievable, as far as I know, and as far as Naomi knows, if you're using this technique that we've developed. It's not possible to get silver to shine in this way, not that I know anyway. And so this was just something that came up by complete chance, and in the words of Bob Ross, a happy accident.
Yeah.
We don't have mistakes, we only have happy accidents. Well, maybe apart from that time when the dial exploded in Naomi's face.
Oh my God.
But I agreed with her that I wouldn't bring that up, so we shouldn't.
Yeah, we're gonna edit this most probably.
So that was actually the MIC one. So the MIC dial is very, very special. So those who don't know, the MIC, the Micro Indie Collective, is a group that focuses on indie brands and micro brands that are doing something very special with their watches. And this is a space that I really like, and I feel it's so exciting to be a part of that, that particular group, because there's so much passion in there, both from the makers themselves and from the people participating in the debate and all that happens in there. There's many feelings in there, but it's feelings of passion, and that's what I really love about it. And there we are doing different things, and many brands are doing collaborations with MIC, and we thought this was a perfect opportunity to make something that was completely different from what we've done in the past. And we are passionate as well, and we wanted to give back to this community, which is, which we have been a part of for a while now. And we wanted to do something very, very special with that. Yeah. And so you've probably seen the Tempest Grey, right?
Yes.
The Tempest Grey is one of our most three-dimensional dials ever. It's carved out of a solid piece of silver, just like all the others, but it's very, very deep. So you get this ocean-like texture and this gray layered on top of it. It's inspired by the Indian monsoon season. And we wanted to take that and just crank it up to 11. So in a sense, you can say that the new concept watch, which hasn't got a name yet, by the way.
Yeah, it didn't.
Maybe when you see this podcast, we have a name, but
it will be sold out when this.
Of course, but you know, but this is that, but on steroids.
Yeah.
So it's so deep. The engraving in the silver is so deep in some areas, and shallower in other areas. So you have like. And enamel is like when you if you put enamel onto a piece of silver, it's going to be lighter or darker depending on the shallowness of the enamel. So just like looking down into the water, if you're standing there and
it's gonna be light.
In a boat and it's very, very deep, you can't see shit. But if it's very shallow, you can see the bottom of the ocean. It's the same thing with enamel, basically. And so if you have parts that are closer to the surface, it's going to appear lighter because there's less enamel there. And if it's deeper, if the engraving is deeper, it's going to appear very dark.
Yeah.
And so you have this amazing landscape almost of valleys and
it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's peaks and valleys. And it's just the most crazy 3-dimensional dial we have ever made, and probably it will ever make, because unfortunately this was a nightmare to make.
Yeah, and I spent some time with it because I'm shooting the watch, so I took a look at the dial, and it has different kind of depth from the other dials that you're making. Although that already that I have a lot of favorites in this collection over here. This is what I like about your pieces. Each one gives you different experience. I told you I liked so much the honeycomb. Version 1 and version 2, I like version 2 more. Thanks to a friend. Shout out to Chris, Time Texas. I saw the watch at his page and I was like, damn, this is a beautiful dial, But this is a piece that I loved. Another piece that I love, the orange one that we have here. And you explained to me the technique that you actually use a very fine blade, no?
Yeah, it's a very sharp and fine graver that is used to carve, this pattern into the silver. And so, the difference from this is that it's really, really fine lines being transferred onto the silver, which the other types of dial we remove quite a bit of material from. This is not like that at all. So you don't really remove that much material, and the lines are much finer. So if you want to see something really, really satisfying, you have a look at how this engraving is happening. It's one of the most satisfying things to watch. We should make some more videos like that, because I think it's really just one of the most amazing things to see. And it puts you to sleep. It's amazing.
I proudly would say that the last time I had the same feeling holding this orange piece was when I was holding a Moser Endeavor mosaic green dial. It was one of 50. I don't know if you know it, but I'm gonna show you it's one of my favorite pieces ever. So to get the same feeling, it's something good. Let me ask you this question. So because you deal with a lot of brand founders, watchmakers, indies, micros, even we're talking about groups that we're in, contributing and seeing people, talking to them. Which of the newly founded brands that you find inspiring and you think that they're doing a good job and there's something that you can learn from?
I think we all have something to learn from the brands that dare to be very much different from what you'd expect. And especially because there's so many opinions of what should we do, what you should do as a watchmaker, as a founder of a micro brand. How a watch should look is based on preferences, and so many people have these bland preferences. If you ask, Henry Ford once said that if you ask people what they wanted, they would say that they wanted a faster horse, right? But he went ahead and made the automobile.
Yes.
So sometimes people don't know what they want before they see it. And I think that's the same case with brands such as Studio Underdog, for instance. I love brands that dare to be playful and dare to do whatever they think should be the right choice and not what everybody else thinks that they should do and shouldn't do. So I think a good answer would be that. I also love brands like Radcliffe, for instance, who dare to make things that are completely bonkers. And I feel like there's some poetic value in that. And it's not only just a tool to view what time is. This is also a way to, it's something to be happy. Yes. When you look at your watch, it brings you joy, right? It should be that. Because if you want the time, you can pick up your phone, look on the quartz watch on your wall or whatever. But I think as far as having, a mechanical watch goes, I think that should bring you joy every time you wear it, every time you wind it up. If it's a manual wind, I sometimes wind up my automatics as well, because I just love that connection with my watch. And I feel like any watch should bring that kind of joy. And if it's a playful watch, such as the watermelon or the field watches, I love those. From Studio Underdog. I think that's just how it should be.
Yeah.
And that's our place as indie brands or market brands, is doing something that's different from what's on the market already.
What makes me happy that you mentioned two brands that they were actually sitting in the same seat that you're sitting. So this means I'm on the right track.
Yeah, maybe we have something in common.
Yeah. I mean, but both are great choices and a lot of things to learn from. They're bold. They didn't care much about what they're doing or what is going to be the reaction of the people around them. In favor of time, I have a couple of final questions. Maybe you already answered that you're planning to expand, add enamelers to the team. Maybe you're going to be expanding the models, expanding the quantity. But what should enthusiasts be expecting from you? This is a two-parter questions, actually. So what enthusiasts should be expecting from you?
Right.
And the second thing, where do you see the brand? What's your vision for the brand? Where do you want to be?
So that's a very good question, because when I started this whole journey, I had one answer for that. If you ask me today, it's a completely different answer. It's not that I'm not consistent, because I am, but
you develop,
but
right?
Things change and we change. And I think priorities also change. And the main thing, is listening to the feedback that you get. You have this idea that some things are going to turn out in a specific way, right? As soon as you hear, as soon as you find you have, as soon as you're in contact with reality and with the people actually using your watches, you get really honest and useful feedback that you can use. All the time we are changing the way that we approach things, not on a very fundamental level. We are still having the same core values, and but we are very open to do different things. And we don't have like a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan already. We are like, we just want to bring joy to people, and we want to make what we feel is the right choice. And for us, this is the FH01, right? And we've made so many versions of it. So you can say that each of these versions is its own model, right? but it's in its essence, it's the same watch case and it's the same movement inside, and what differs is the dial, of course. And we want to do different cases. We want to do different types of watches.
Do you see yourself, for example, doing a chronograph? Something sophisticated in dial?
Yeah, at some point it would be cool. It would be very cool to do. But a chronograph is not real. Well, you
something
should never
with complications.
Say never,
right? So yeah, I think it just popped up my mind. It wasn't a question that I prepared or anything. But I think with what you're doing now with a plain dial, I think you can do crazy stuff in a more sophisticated dial in nature. So
I think you're right, but we are always open. But in the near future, of course, we are looking at the FH02, and that's going to be, some would say more of the same, and some would say it's development. It's an evolution of the FH01, and that's going to be very good. It's going to be a little bit of a different design language. We still have, you can still see that it's a Vitreum, but it's going to be different. It is.
I can't wait to see what you're gonna do, because I told you I'm hardly impressed. Not because anything, but because I deal with a lot of watches on daily basis, and what you're doing now is just you're warming up, my friend. So,
but I guess I can say one thing that will never change. And that is that we are embracing our naivety. And what I mean by that is that if you're taught something in school, or if you're training to become something, you have a teacher telling you what you can and cannot do. And we are blessed by the fact that, I'm blessed by the fact that I don't really have a teacher saying I can't. Well, I have Naomi, but I sort of don't listen to her half of the time. So, but when I don't listen to her, most of the time she's right, and some of the time, something magical happens, and that's that blessing of being completely naive, and not knowing what's not possible, and what we're going to do with the next models, I hope, is develop new ways of enameling.
Yeah.
And doing something completely different that has never been seen on a watch. So we don't want to make just another enamel watch that looks like every other, because quite frankly, there are so many offerings out there, which I love, by the way. I feel like the other companies doing enamel dials are not competitors at all. I think they're more like colleagues. And the reason for me to say that is that when you're buying a watch, and you've probably heard this many times, you're probably telling your wife, it's the last watch, I promise. This is the last watch. When I have this watch, I'm not going to buy any more watches, I promise. You're going to buy more watches. And as soon as you've seen an enamel watch, as soon as you've owned a watch from one of the other brands, for instance, I'm certain that the next watch you're going to buy, you are going to consider another enamel watch. And so that benefits us all. So if one buys one of my watches, they're much more likely to go and buy like a Lundi Bleu, which are amazing, and some of the other enameling watchmakers.
The problem with the enamel watches, it's not a complication that you want to take a box in a collection. It's something which, from even one brand, each watch is gonna give you a different experience, because it's hitting the spirit more than hitting the functionality. But anyway, since we ran out of time, let me first thank you so much for accepting the invite once again. It has been a lovely, one of the most special episodes, to be honest. And I cannot wait to see what Vitrem is gonna be and what you and Naomi are gonna be achieving. For those who are watching us at home or listening to us, thank you so much for watching us. And until next time, thank you.
Thank you.